If I told you, hey, I'm getting a strike force together to go battle against the devil that has the ability to erase the entire concepts of the devils that it consumes, what devils are you sending to fight against that devil? Are you sending things like the pestilence devil, the fever devil, the gun devil, or are you sending things like the mouth and the ear devil? Because if you chose the latter, congratulations, you could work in the Japanese government apparently. But if you chose the former, congratulations, you have a fully developed frontal cortex. Because while sure, I get it, if hypothetically you're trying to test whether or not Chainsaw Man consuming a devil erases a concept, erasing a concept that exists on everybody's faces is a pretty good way to see if it disappeared. But when the concepts getting erased are crucial for communication, I don't know if they're your best choice. And I feel as though when I say that, I'm not being insane. Especially when you consider the fact that the strength of a devil is based off how many people are afraid of the thing that devil is named after. And while I'm sure there is people who are afraid of ears and mouths, I can't imagine there's as many as, oh, I don't know, snakes, ghosts, wolves, even guinea pigs. There are literally 1 million better options than sending the crucial body part devils to go battle against the unknown entity that is the Black No-Eyed Chainsaw Man. And yet the Japanese government is rolling the dice. But I wish I could say, genuinely, that's the worst thing that the Japanese government was attempting to do in chapter 174 of Chainsaw Man. I had to check, it's been 2 weeks since we did a Chainsaw Man chapter review. See, because not only is the Japanese government sending vital organ devils to go battle against Chainsaw Man, but they're also trying to kill 10,000 children. And for those of you saying 10,000 children, that's Aaron on a light day. Yeah, it's still not great. But why? Why is the Japanese government trying to murder 10,000 children in Chainsaw Man? I feel as though the algorithm's gonna pick this up and the robot's gonna be like, why is he spreading fake news about Japan? We're talking about Chainsaw Man. And I'll tell you why the Japanese government of Chainsaw Man is trying to kill 10,000 children, specifically from the ages of 0 to 9 in front of mirrors. And that's because they're trying to get rid of aging as a concept, which is different from what I thought they were trying to do, but also not that far off. See, because a lot happened in chapter 174. A new primal devil was revealed. The devil we saw in chapter 173 was identified. The goal of the Japanese government was laid out clear for us all to see. And 4 new devils were erased. See, these 16 pages were an absolute roller coaster. And today I want to break down everything that happened in this chapter and what it could mean for the future of Chainsaw Man, because today we're talking chapter 174 of Chainsaw Man explained. But before we get to explaining anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you want to see me try to bring real-life challenges to the anime world, go ahead and follow my brand new channel that I created with Stephen He, Chris Barnett, and Danny Mata called Anime IRL. Or if you just want to hear me talk about anime and manga, go ahead and follow my anime podcast, Otaku's Anonymous, where me and Danny Mata break down everything that happened in anime and manga this week. It's available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So, we didn't do a breakdown for chapter 173, not because the chapter wasn't good, but because I didn't realize the chapter was out until 2 days after it came out, and at that point, if you're not first or last. On top of that, well, a ton does happen in chapter 173. Unfortunately, we couldn't necessarily confirm what was happening. I mean, yes, obviously, we saw the mass disappearance of ears on a global scale. We saw the Japanese government confirming the loss of ears and what that means for the entire world. And the Japanese government was so prepared for ears disappearing that they even had prisoners sitting in chairs with super powerful headphones on their heads to communicate with them because of the loss of ears. And we're using those prisoners as a case study to see if any of them knew of the existence of ears, something that a fair amount of the devil hunters in the public safety division managed to retain memories of. We then saw multiple devil hunters cut off their fingers and write in mirrors HIT while saying things like cervical spine, neck, and vertebrae. And it's at this point that a devil that we had never seen before was revealed. And as it watched these letters being written out in these mirrors, it said back to itself, hit, at which point it launched its fist through a mirror that was above Denji and crushed him. Kind of. However, Denji was able to free himself out from under this fist and cut off 2 of the fingers of this unidentified devil. And it's at this point that Hirofumi used his contract with the Octopus Devil to grab Denji and force him to spit up Ear Devil, which confirmed to us that it is possible to force the Chainsaw Man to regurgitate the devils he eats. And once those devils are regurgitated, the concept that was erased alongside with their consumption comes back to the world, and thus ears returned to all the elephants of the globe. Now, the only thing that chapter confirmed to us is that the Public Safety Division was working with the devil in hell, who we presumed to be very powerful, and that the Chainsaw Man can be forced to regurgitate the concepts and devils that he's erased. However, to what degree, we're not entirely entirely sure. See, obviously, yes, Chainsaw Man was forced to regurgitate the ear devil. However, he had just consumed the ear devil. And thus, much in the same way that you can throw up food you ate an hour ago, you usually can't throw up food you ate a week ago, or a month ago, or a year ago, or 10 years ago. And thus, while this moment from 173 might prove to us that the Chainsaw Man can be forced to regurgitate concepts that he just erased, it doesn't necessarily confirm to us that concepts that he erased a long time ago, like partially war, nuclear weapons, World War II, could ever be brought back. However, fortunately, we did get a bunch more exposition on how the devil erasure ability works in chapter 174. So let's get into it. See, chapter 174 revolves around a conversation of the highest political figures in the Japanese government. This conversation doesn't appear to be happening at the National Diet Building, which is the building in central Tokyo where all governmental activity takes place. In fact, the place that this conversation appears to be happening seems more akin to the Tokyo Imperial Palace than anything, which wouldn't necessarily be unheard of, but the Imperial Palace is for the Emperor, not the regular government. And if you're thinking about it, no, the Emperor has no political power in Japan. But he is still revered in the Shinto religion as a walking human deity, a descendant of the gods. So they're still pretty good. Regardless, this chapter opens with the Prime Minister of Japan reading through some documents. And before any of you ask, no, none of the political figures shown in this chapter are real political figures that ever ruled in Japan. The Prime Minister of Japan, Kentaro Ishida, doesn't exist and never has existed. Same with the Minister of Affairs and Communications, Harai Sakagami, or the Minister of Defense, Shin Toma. None of those people ever existed, and for good reason. Fujimoto is about to make all of these people do some incredibly questionable things. And if they actually existed, he'd be hit with a defamation case so fast it would make his eyes go dizzy. Now, the documents that the Prime Minister are poring over are transcripts of a conversation that group of political officials had while the concept of ears was erased. That is to say, there was roughly 3 minutes on Earth where ears, not only as an entity, but also as a concept, didn't exist. Those 3 minutes started with the Chainsaw Man eating the head of the ear devil and ended with the Chainsaw Man throwing it up. During those 3 minutes, those elected government officials talked about how ears have never existed, at least within the confines of their memory. They then, while having this conversation, transcribed the conversation. And this is important because once the ear devil is thrown up by the Chainsaw Man, they all forget that they had ever forgotten the concept of ears and forgot the conversation they had about whether or not they knew what ears were. Which proves to us that not only does the Chainsaw Man have the ability to erase concepts, but once the Chainsaw Man unerases a concept by puking it up, it also erases the idea that people ever forgot about that concept in the first place. So if hypothetically the Chainsaw Man were still able to throw up concepts that are erased a year ago, 2 years ago, a lifetime ago, every human would forget that they forgot the things that over the course of those years the Chainsaw Man had erased. That is to say that if Chainsaw Man were able to regurgitate the World War II devil or the spicy German devil, people wouldn't realize that they forgot that those concepts existed in the first place, which is kind of crazy. Simply by regurgitating a concept, if Chainsaw Man is able to be forced to regurgitate concepts that possibly were consumed years ago, he could effectively, by regurgitating these devils, erase years of conversations and memories from the entire globe. Now, the conversation continues on when the Minister of Affairs and Communication chips in and says, I've communicated with all 27 of the archivists and the devil extermination squads, and they've confirmed that the concept of ears was erased and then restored. We then kick it to the Minister of Defense, who asks, what does public safety believe they can accomplish with this power? He says this to Fumiko Mifune, also known as the girl who took Denji to karaoke to sing a song that technically doesn't exist yet in the Chainsaw Man universe. And it's at this point that it's revealed that she is actually a part of Special Division 7. And now, well, I can't say for certain that that's the last of the Special Divisions. We did in the last 2 chapters watch Special Divisions 5 and 6 get completely eradicated. Oh, and as Fumiko appears to just be a regular devil hunter, that probably means that she's actually in charge of Special Division 7, as Special Divisions are usually composed of fiends and devils and then one human who's in charge. And it's this point that Fumiko reveals the true intentions of the Public Safety Division. And that is what we've all anticipated for a long time. Fumiko and the Public Safety Division want to use the Chainsaw Man's power to erase harmful concepts. And by erasing all of these harmful concepts, essentially double down on human evolution. As if they could erase all concepts that would be harmful to humans, they could effectively make humans a godlike race of immortals. Now, it's at this point that the Minister of Defense asks Mifune to be more concrete. And it's now at this point that we truly start to get some really riveting exposition. See, Mifune reveals to the group that the Public Safety Division has an amicable relationship with a primal devil, and that primal devil is the devil that we saw in chapter 173, which makes sense when you consider the fact that that devil was in hell, and all primal devils, at least most primal devils, exist in hell because they're too powerful to be killed. And the only way a devil ever ends up on Earth, unless it's going through one of the doors, is dying, because once you die in hell, you go to Earth, and once you die on Earth, you go to hell. And this primal devil that we saw in chapter 173 was none other than the aging devil, which is interesting. See, usually when a new primal devil pops up, I go on a long tangent about how there's only a couple of primal fears, and technically aging isn't one of them. But then again, it's also not one of them. See, to just quickly go over the primal devils that we know about up until this point, we have falling, darkness, and maybe death. See, the death devil is referred to as the great king of terror and is the eldest of the four horsemen, and is also known as the strongest existing devil, who embodies the ultimate terror of death. Now she has never been seen before, and she's never necessarily been confirmed to be a primal devil, though it is largely implied. However, with the reveal of the aging devil, that would now put us at 4 primal devils. And I find the aging devil being a primal devil rather interesting, because if we are sitting here and assuming that the death devil is its own primal entity, then the aging devil also being a primal entity feels kind of redundant, because at least in my eyes, the reason that somebody would be afraid of aging is because of death. But then again, that line of logic applies to almost all devils. The reason that people are afraid of war, guns, and famine is death, which is why the death devil is the most powerful devil. She has her hands in basically everything. But the aging devil being a separate primal fear to me just feels weird. Like, yes, people are 100% afraid of aging, and it's not always something to do with death, but that being a primal fear just feels wrong to me. Though it does make sense. Whether you're willing to admit it or not, everyone's afraid of aging. Regardless, the aging devil has a favorable relationship with the Public Safety Division, and therefore the Public Safety Division has received what they consider to be a pretty good offer from it. See, the aging devil, somewhat ironically, has no connection to life. That is to say that the aging devil doesn't care if it's alive or not. But then again, when you consider the fact that this entity has to be tens of thousands of years old, it's probably seen enough and done enough. Now, to this point, that it's revealed to us that depending on the terms of the contract created with the Public Safety Division, that the aging devil is willing to be consumed by Chainsaw Man, which could hypothetically lead to a world where nobody ages. And not even just nobody, nothing. And this is a question that one of the members of the Japanese Illuminati asks Mifune, asking if the aging devil is consumed by Chainsaw Man, will that stop the cognitive and physical aging decline of all living beings? However, Mifune says that unfortunately she won't know until it's erased. And unfortunately, even speculating about the answer is incredibly difficult, because in the 3 minutes that ears didn't exist on Earth, a lot of the things that are built in human society that revolve around humans having ears still existed. Cell phones and radios still existed. Ear picks were still sold as arts and crafts features. That is to say that while humans lost ears and the concept of ears were erased, a world built around humans having ears still existed. And therefore, if you were hypothetically to erase a concept like aging, and while humans might lose the fear of aging and might even lose the idea of aging from their minds, humans and all other beings may still age. They may just not know about it. Now, the Illuminati says, oh, this is all incredibly messy, and Mifune agrees, saying, yes, Chainsaw Man is incredibly messy. And it's at this point that she confirms what the goal of the Public Safety Division is. See, apparently what the Public Safety Division is currently doing with Denji is trying to keep his power as controlled as possible. That is to say that they made the black, no-eyed Chainsaw Man appear by triggering Denji, and they are currently, by throwing slews of different devils and fiends at Chainsaw Man, trying to prove that if concepts are consumed, they can be erased, as a way to show this Japanese Illuminati of political figures that the power of Chainsaw Man can be used for good, or at least for the Japanese good. Because, well, it might sound kind of crazy, and this isn't something they talk about in the chapter, there's probably an American devil. There's probably a Japanese devil, a Dubai devil. If there's a devil associated with mouths and ears, there's almost definitely a devil associated with the nationality of every country on Earth. Which means, hypothetically, if Chainsaw Man were to consume the American devil, Americans would cease to exist as a concept. And thus, control over Chainsaw Man's powers is basically control over the entire globe. And thus, thus it's at this point that the Japanese Minister of Defense chips in and says, well, what are the aging devil's terms? And it's this point that Mifune reveals that the terms of the aging devil to be consumed by the Chainsaw Man without resisting is that the aging devil wants the Japanese government to kill 10,000 children between infancy and 9 years old in front of mirrors. And those children specifically have to be of Japanese citizenry. Yes, you heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. The only thing the Japanese government needs to do in order to stop the entire world from aging is to murder 10,000 children, specifically 10,000 Japanese under 9-year-old children, which is it's a big ask, but is it too big of an ask to get rid of the concept of aging forever? Well, if some of you just went yes, wrong answer. This is literally an age-old quandary. In fact, it's the entire plot of the Maze Runner trilogy. Assuaging the fear of aging of the older generation should never come at the cost of the younger generation. Aging is accepting aging and realizing that if you really want to leave an impact on this world far beyond the confines of your own lifetime, make meaningful contributions that last, or have children and pass them along to the younger generation. Tie this into the fact that humanity does not deserve immortality, and that humans with immortality would achieve probably much less than we achieve with mortality, on account of the fact that if there was no promise of death, there'd be no reason to do anything on a day-to-day basis. And you'll have what some of the dumbest people in your life will identify as an interesting philosophical argument. It's not. There is no greater good in the eradication of 10,000 innocent children. And that's the point of this moment. It's not to make you, the reader, go, would I kill 10,000 children to stop aging? Because if you would, you're a bad person. The conversation here is not a thought starter. It's supposed to show the corrupt nature of government. Now, obviously, these rather insane terms put everybody in the room into a shushed silence, as Mifune continues to explain that they don't know how long Denji will be in the form of the Chainsaw Man, and they don't even know if they'll be able to confine him. And thus, if they are going to agree to the terms of the aging devil, they need to make their decision as quickly as possible. And thus, another problematic layer is sprinkled on top of this argument sandwich. See, because not only acquiring 10,000 children, but also making sure that they all have Japanese citizenry and they won't be missed by their parents takes a fair amount of time. Time that the Public Safety Division probably doesn't have, as they're battling against what could be the strongest devil in existence outside of the Death Devil, and who could even possibly be stronger than the Death Devil when you consider the fact that everybody is now terrified of Chainsaw Man in the Chainsaw Man universe because people are just sprouting chainsaws out of their heads. And thus there is a solid, and I mean solid, possibility that 10,000 children are gathered and murdered, and then Chainsaw Man can't be corralled to go to hell to go eat the aging devil. And thus 10,000 children die for nothing. However, that's cool with the Japanese Illuminati, or I guess specifically the former Minister of Finance, as he tells Mifune that his grandson in the private sector has already begun collecting children orphaned by the devil attacks. As to why he's collecting these orphans, we don't know. But now their role in life is to be murdered in front of mirrors. He then says, if we need more orphans, Takahashi, reach out to your man who runs an international adoption agency. Now, Takahashi is the Minister of Economy, Industry, and Trade. He then tells Takahashi to give these foreign-born orphans Japanese citizenry because so long as they become Japanese citizens, it's all the same. And therefore, whether or not these 10,000 children are coming from Japan or somewhere else and are just being given Japanese citizenry, so long as they're murdered in front of a mirror, they'll work. Now, to this point that the former Ministry of Finance says that 10,000 lives is a small price to pay for the future of Japan. But there's a really important takeaway here. See, the reason that the former Ministry of Japan is the former Ministry of Japan is because he's old. Like, really old. He's in a wheelchair, wearing socks, bent over with his eyes barely open, old. And therefore, what Tatsuki Fujimoto is doing here is really obvious hand-holding. He's showing us, hey, look, the government's not doing this for the people of Japan. The government are doing this for themselves. He is making the key mouthpiece of the Japanese government, trying to murder 10,000 children to guarantee immortality for humankind, the oldest dude he could imagine. Because while you can sit here and say, oh, I'd sacrifice 10,000 children for the greater good of humanity, at the core of every single one of those arguments is a deeply incredibly selfish person. And that's what Tatsuki Fujimoto is trying to tell you. Oh, I'm not doing another Attack on Titan where people are like, oh, I don't know, sometimes genocide is the right choice. Takanashi, then identifying himself as the only non-selfish person in the room, says, I can't do that. But the former Minister of Finance says, you can. And after that, he says, Takanashi, you have a family, right? You have 4 children, right? Very clearly saying that so long as you don't do this for me, I will go gather up your 4 children and add them to the 10,000 rank. And thus Takanashi buckles under the weight of this threat and says, I can do it. The former Minister of Finance then tells Mifune that they will provide the 10,000 children and that she should relay that up the flagpole as soon as she can. Mifune then says, yes, sir, opens her cell phone and calls the Special Safety Division, all with a big old smile on her face. However, we see as this call is ringing with her cell phone to her ear, she makes eye contact with the former Ministry of Finance and she begins to sweat. However, as to why she's sweating isn't necessarily immediately revealed. So we don't know whether or not she's sweating because she doesn't want to do this, or she's sweating because she's nervous about conveying the message. However, as to why she's sweating isn't necessarily all that important, because the message will never be conveyed. See, because before Mifune is able to pass along this message, we see in the next page that her mouth is gone, along with the mouths of everybody on Earth, elephants included. I think Fujimoto just likes drawing elephants. And it's this point on the last page of this chapter, we see Chainsaw Man standing alone in an alley, holding on to the decapitated corpse of what appears to be the Mouth Devil. And it's at this point that it's revealed to us that 4 new devils have been erased. Those 4 devils being the Octopus Devil, the Bitterness Devil, the Snow Devil, and the Mouth Devil. And let me tell you right now, the Mouth Devil being erased is about 10 times worse than the Ear Devil being erased. See, because not only, like with the Ear Devil, can humans no longer communicate outside of the confines of ASL, but ears serve one function and one function alone. And that's hearing. But the human mouth serves way more functions than just that. Now, see, outside of allowing us to augment different sounds to create words and sentences that allow for other people to hear what we're saying, the mouth also allows you to eat. And thus the reason that this chapter decided to highlight to us is that the erasure of ears didn't get rid of things that were built around a world meant for ears, is because Fujimoto was trying to highlight just how drastic a world without mouths would be. But what do I and Fujimoto mean by that? Well, if simply erasing ears doesn't erase things that require ears like cell phones and radios, then simply erasing mouths wouldn't erase things that revolve around the need for a human mouth, like food and drink. And this is actually corroborated in the second to last page of this chapter, as we see after everybody has lost their mouth that somebody drops the drink they were holding, as drinking it is not only no longer an option, but was never an option. See, the erasure of mouths won't get rid of things like drinks and food. However, it will get rid of people consuming those drinks or food, at least in a conventional way, which means with the erasure of the Mouth Devil, assuming that Chainsaw Man isn't made to throw it back up, without hooking the entirety of the world up to an IV drip, humanity is 2 days away from death. And thus I once again ask the question I asked in the beginning of this video. If you're building a team of devils and fiends to go battle against a devil that can erase the concepts those devils are powered up after, why on God's green earth would you send the Ear and the Mouth Devil? They cannot be that powerful based off the rules that have been established in this universe, and their function is incredibly important to not only humankind, but all living beings. Tie that into the fact that you've now destroyed the Arctic climate on both sides of the planet, as snow is incredibly vital in any kind of Arctic ecosystem, and is also incredibly vital in basically all ecosystems, as large swaths of the human population need snow melt for fresh water. And even if you do get the Chainsaw Man to spit the Mouth Devil back up, you've effectively doomed 30 to 40% of living beings to extinction. Not to mention octopuses are gone, which isn't the end of the world, obviously, but like, if bitterness was an option, let's send more things like bitterness. Listen, Special Division 6 had it right. It was an entire team composed of bug devils. Do that! Do so many more bug devils! Do you know how powerful the cockroach devil would be? I mean, actually, probably about as powerful as the centipede devil, and the centipede devil got pieced. But yeah, Chainsaw Man is currently hurtling towards what could be its most insane chapters yet. And while I admittedly hypothesized that the end of Chainsaw Man was coming because he ate the ear devil and thus nobody would be able to communicate, I'm not gonna do the same thing here because I genuinely do not believe that the rest of this manga is gonna play out with nobody having mouths. However, the situation for the Public Safety Division is relatively dire. Special Division 5 and 6 have been completely eradicated. The aging devil has already lost 2 of its fingers, and Hirofumi has lost the octopus devil. Really, when it comes down to it, they don't have a ton of options left, especially options strong enough to make the Chainsaw Man throw up. And so, who knows? Maybe the rest of this manga will happen without mouths, because so long as that happens, technically, the order to murder 10,000 children will never be passed down. Then again, who's to say? There's a new chapter in 7 days, and quite honestly, I haven't been this excited for Chainsaw Man in a long time. The manga is finally getting back to its insane roots, and I couldn't be happier. But I'm curious to hear from you guys. What did you think of this chapter? Do you believe there's a real moral quandary in the argument of whether or not we should get rid of aging at the cost of 10,000 children, or not? Tell me in the comments below, and while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell.
Think about it, Nick. We could be immortal.
Yeah, man, I don't want to live forever. I barely want 85 years.